Welcome to another edition of the Sourdough Simpleton. I'm Mark Levy, the Simpleton. Today we're going to be making pretzels. Sourdough soft pretzels. Well, not exactly today. This is a 2-day recipe. We're going to be doing it today and tomorrow. And we're going to go through all the steps and show you how it works. This is not technically difficult. You can do it. It just takes a little bit of time. So for today we're going to make up the dough and we're going to begin to move it so that the sourdough goes all through the dough, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. Starting with the ingredients, we have our stand mixture with the dough hook attachment. We have all-purpose flour. I use King Arthur all-purpose flour. This is 200 grams. And as I said before, we're going to do all the measurements in grams and not by volume. It just works better that way. In addition to the 200 grams of all-purpose flour, we have 120 grams, okay, it's a little bit less than a cup, of bread flour. And again, this is King Arthur bread flour. We have 11 grams of salt, and this is non-iodized table salt, as opposed to kosher salt or sea salt. We have 25 grams of light brown sugar. We have 260 grams of water, and again this is filtered water so it takes the chlorine out, and this is at room temperature. And we have our active sourdough starter. Now I got up early this morning and I fed the starter so it'll be nice and active by now. So you do want a nice active starter. This is 224 grams of starter. And it all goes into the mixture at the same time. And now we're going to mix it. We're going to mix it for about, maybe 10 minutes or so. We're going to start on slow speed and we'll speed it up. Now, we've talked about dough hydration in the past. This is a fairly well hydrated dough. The hydration of this is about 70%. That means this is going to be a bit of a sticky dough. It's not going to be a dry dough like many breads are. So you have to kind of work with it that way. So as it starts to mix, let's take a look at it here. Looking at it, it's mixing nicely. You can see the various elements beginning to incorporate as it's mixing. So now I think we can probably boost it up to a little higher speed. Now we're going to let it mix at this speed for about 5 minutes to take a look at it. Now as it's mixing, if you find that the dough is not coming together as well as you like, or it's a little bit too sticky, you certainly can add some extra flour. I've added some AP flour to this already, and we'll see how it comes together. It may be we need to adjust the recipe a little bit, we'll find out together. Okay, let's let it mix a little bit more and we'll be right back. So now with some additional flour, the dough, as you can see, is coming together nicely, and it is a soft, sticky dough, as we talked about. Having thoroughly mixed this dough, we're going to take it out of the bowl. And we're going to put this into a greased bowl for about a half an hour before our next step. So you can see that. Little scraper. It's hard to do this when you can't see what you're doing, so pardon me for blocking your view. But we're going to use a little bowl scraper here to take the dough out of the bowl. A very useful tool. Should add to my list of tools that you need. So now we have the dough in this bowl, and we're going to let it sit here and rest for about a half an hour covered. And after that we'll be back and start doing some folding. What am I talking about? I'll show you in, for you, just a few seconds. For me, about a half an hour. Well, it's been a bit more than a half hour. That's one of the nice things about sourdough. There are places where you can be a little bit loose with the timing, so it isn't quite so critical, at least not right now it isn't. And the dough has been resting for that length of time. So it's time to begin to do the folding. Now the folding, I'll show you what that does and tell you about it as we do it. So we're going to take the far end of the dough, bring it up, and fold it over. And then we're going to rotate and do the same thing. Then we're going to rotate and do the same thing. And one more time and do the same thing. So that is one rotation of folding the dough. So now we do it again. And fold it. And fold it. And fold it. And fold it. And what this actually does is it turns the dough inside out. We're taking the outside of the dough and bringing it in, and the inside of the dough is coming on the outside. Once again, we're going to fold it, and fold it, and fold it, and fold it. And finally, turn the entire dough up over, and let it rest for another 30 minutes. This develops the gluten in the dough and mixes the sourdough starter and the materials in the dough all together nicely, and will make for a very nice dough when we're all finished. Now we do this a total of 6 times over 3 hours, so that's every half hour for 3 hours. That's 6 intervals. Each time we fold it, we're going to fold it 4 times. I'm going to spare you the repetition of having to watch me do this over and over and over again. It all looks the same. So after we finish folding it, it goes in the refrigerator overnight. So the next time I see you, it'll be tomorrow, and we'll see how things look at that point in time and proceed with baking our sourdough soft pretzels here on the Sourdough Simpleton. Well, as you can tell by the new shirt, it's a new day here in the Sourdough Simpleton's kitchen, and the dough has risen overnight. Let's take a look at it here. So it's risen overnight in the refrigerator, and you can see it's nice and smooth and soft, and we're going to go ahead and roll this dough out now and make some pretzels out of it, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is prepare the work surface. This is my favorite Silpat, which I use for rolling out on, but this dough is a little bit on the sticky side, so we're going to put down some bench flour on the Silpat just to be sure. We're not going to go crazy with the flour because we don't want to make the pretzels too floury, but I don't want them to stick either. So we're going to begin by taking and dumping out this dough all together. We use our friendly neighborhood bench scraper for that. For our bowl scraper, rather. Yeah, comes out in one nice big piece. And we're going to want to cut this, for today we're going to cut this into quarters, because we're going to try and make about a dozen pretzels. It's probably easier to work on 3 than it is to work on 12. So we'll cut this into rough quarter size portions. And if my bowl scraper isn't strong enough, I'll revert to my bench scraper to go ahead and cut this dough. And we'll take 1/4 to start with. and then we're going to roll that out. The other portions we will put aside and do those subsequently. But as is my wont, I won't bore you with seeing the same thing 4 times over, even though I have to bore myself by doing it multiple times over. Okay, so we have this little piece of dough, and we're going to want to roll this out to approximately 22, 24 inches, or if you prefer, about 60 centimeters long. And we're going to make 3 pretzels out of this, so it should be in the neighborhood of a little more than an inch or so wide, so that we can cut it into the appropriate strands. So we'll just go ahead and do some rolling. Now this is a sticky dough. It's going to stick to your rolling pin, as you see. So you have to flour your rolling pin. And don't worry, because quite frankly, any extra flour is going to come off to the next stage, which is boiling. So while you're doing this, depending on your time constraints, you're going to want to prepare the water to boil the pretzels. You boil the pretzels because that's what produces that nice crust that you get on pretzels. You boil them in a mixture of water and baking soda. Now, back in the old days, and quite frankly some pretzel bakers still do this, they use food grade sodium hypochlorite, which is lye. But lye is very dangerous to have around the house. After all, we use it for drain cleaner, so you don't really want to do that. But it turns out that plain old baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, is quite an acceptable substitute, and it produces a very, very nice crust. The other thing that you can do, this is strictly optional, is after you boil the pretzels and before you salt them, we're going to get to all those steps in a minute, but before you salt them, you can do an egg wash, much as you would do for many kinds of bread, and that will also help to produce a nice crust on the bread. But again, all these steps are optional. Strictly up to you what you want to do. So we're getting close. This pad is 22 inches long, and I will accept that as a appropriate measure. Okay, so we have our flat about 22 inches long. We're going to cut this into 3 sections for our 3 pretzels that this is going to make. And the best way to do that is with a pizza cutter. You can do it with a knife, you can do it with your bench scraper or bowl scraper, but I think a pizza cutter works the best. And we'll do roughly 3 equal size strips. Well, they're not quite equal, but they're close enough. And then we'll take each strip and kind of smush it together a bit to make a rope. Now, sure, you could take and roll this out to a rope, but personally, I think this works just as well, and it's a bit easier, I find, than trying to roll out a 24-inch or 22-inch or 60 centimeter rope. So here we have one rope. Here we have the second rope. If everything is floured well, you shouldn't have a problem with sticking. And here we have a third rope. So it sticks just a little bit. Okay. Now, to shape the pretzel, I'm going to show it to you in two different directions, so hopefully you can follow along. Looking from this direction, we're going to take the rope, make a U out of it, and put it down in front of us. So we have a giant U. The base of the U will be the base of the pretzel. You cross over the two arms and then twist it around twice. And then bring the two free ends up, making a pretzel. Now, these are not going to look like store-bought pretzels. They're going to look like homemade pretzels, because they are homemade pretzels. So don't think you're going to have absolutely uniform, perfect pretzels. You're not. But you know what? They're going to taste fantastic. Now let me show you in a different angle how you do this pretzel twist. So to twist this pretzel, once again, you take your strip, you make it into the shape of a U. A U. Got it? That becomes the base of the pretzel. You turn these two over and then you twist them. So that's actually a double twist. And then you bring this down, and that is your pretzel shape. Okay? And then that goes onto your that goes onto your baking sheet, which we're going to cover with parchment, which we're going to put a little bit of cooking oil spray onto to make sure that it doesn't stick. So now I'm going to proceed to do the rest of these pretzels, and then I'll be back with you when it's time to put them into the boiling water with baking soda added. So I'm going to go to work, and I'll be back to you in just a few bits. So as you complete the pretzels, you put them onto the greased parchment paper on a baking sheet. And here are the first 6. And now we'll take a look at how this whole mess proceeds. So we've made all the pretzels. We have them all lined up on our cookie sheets or baking pans on parchment paper, which has been sprayed with vegetable oil to prevent sticking. We have in front of us a pot of water to which we've added the baking soda, which is now boiling. And what we're going to do is to lower each one of these pretzels into the water, and that will help to create the crust that we need to make it a pretzel and not just a dinner roll. So we'll use a little spider to lower it in. And yeah, it's going to get messed up a little bit in the process, but c'est la vie. So you're going to put each one in for just maybe 10-15 seconds. And then take it out. And as best as you can, put it back on the paper. Some will come up easier than others. But the key thing in here is to get the bicarbonate of soda onto the edges of onto the dough, so that it helps to create the crust that we want. Now after we've done all of these, we're going to go ahead and salt them. Now I'm using Diamond Kosher salt. I guess this is as good a time as any to tell you why. So here's a word about salt while I'm doing this. Okay, let's have a few words about salt. To begin with, I'm a retired physician. So to me, salt is salt. It doesn't much matter what flavor salt it is, or what shape it is, or how big the crystals are. Chemically, salt is sodium chloride, salt is salt. So let's dispense with that right off the top. But in general, in the kitchen, There are three major kinds of salts you're going to see, with the exception of things like finishing salt, and we could deal with that another time. First of all is plain old-fashioned table salt. Table salt is a small crystal. It comes usually in iodized form for the table. For most of my baking, I've been using non-iodized salt because I feel that the iodine sometimes restricts the ability of the yeast in the sourdough to do its work. So that's table salt. Next we have sea salt. This is in a grinder. They're larger crystals of a variety of shapes, and you use a grinder to grind that down. We use this on the crackers that we made a while back. Made a delightful little crunchy top to the crackers. Not a bad choice for pretzels if you have nothing else. Also, we have kosher salt. Now this is Diamond kosher salt. There are two major brands of kosher salt. There's some other ones, but there are two major brands, Morton's and Diamond. Morton's makes their salt by crushing large bricks of salt, which results generally in flakes of salt. Diamond crystallizes it, which results in crystals of salt. For the pretzels, I think the Diamond works a little bit better because it gives you the crystal that you want on top of the pretzel. But as I say, if you had to, you could certainly use the sea salt as well. Quite frankly, if you had to, you could use whatever you have in a pinch. Now, there is special pretzel salt, which is even a bigger crystal. You can buy that online or maybe at some specialty food stores near you. I don't have any, so I'm using the Diamond kosher salt for the purposes of this recipe. But as I said a little bit earlier, or maybe I'll say it later, I'm not really sure when I say it or said it, but if you, for some reason, didn't want to use salt on your pretzels and you wanted to use, say, cinnamon and sugar or some kind of maybe sesame seeds, go for it. This is experimentation. You can do what you want to do. So that's a little bit about salt. Now, back to the cooking. So now you know all about salt. So we're going to take some kosher salt and put it all over these pretzels while they are still wet with the water. I like my pretzels salty. I feel it's always better to put a little extra one and rub it off than have a pretzel which isn't salty enough. Clearly you can salt this to your taste. You can make baldies if you don't like salt, or some people put other things on their pretzels as well. So now we'll proceed with the second pan. And do that as well. Once again, pick it up, lower it into the water, just for a few seconds. I mean, 10-15 seconds really is enough. And after this, we're going to let these sit and rise for about a half an hour or so. While the oven warms up, we're going to put the oven on 450 bake, or if you have a convection oven, you can do 425 convection. And then we'll see how they come out. So we're going to finish this up, and then we'll be back with you when it's time to bake. So we're finally getting close to the end of this long and arduous process, which has taken some 2 days to complete for pretzels, but it'll be worth it. The oven's now at temperature 425 convection. We have 2 racks in the oven. Make sure you put that in the oven before you heat the oven up, otherwise it's going to be oven mitt time to put the racks in, but let's do that. We're going to let these cook for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to see how they look, and we'll let them cool down a little bit, and we'll see how they taste. Be right back. Well, it's been 10 minutes now, and you've seen them brown. What you can't appreciate, though, is the way this smells. It smells like a pretzel shop. Let's have a look. Well, taking a look at these, they clearly look homemade, but you know what? I'm sure they're delicious. We'll let them cool, and then we'll have a bite. So was it worth it? I mean, this was a recipe that started out yesterday, involved mixing up the dough, which was a pretty straightforward mix, and then putting it into a bowl, and then every half hour for 3 hours, doing a fold to make sure the dough was nice and smooth. And so we're looking at maybe 4 hours or so of time yesterday. Then it's sat in the fridge overnight. And then this morning, taking the dough out, portioning it out, rolling it out to ropes, making the pretzel shapes, letting it rise a bit, putting it into the boiling water with the baking soda in it, putting salt on top, and then after another rise, baking it. It's been a long time, but was it worth it? Well, I can tell you this. First of all, these rose a bit more than I would have liked, so you lose some of the pretzel shape. When you're looking at these, some of them really do have a good pretzel shape. Others look more like rolls, but you can see the pretzel outline on them. The kosher salt doesn't give you the big white pieces that the pretzel salt would give you, but it still has the salty taste to it. And it smells like a pretzel, so let's find out. Break one open a little bit. Oh yeah. It has the nice crust to it. It's nice and chewy in the middle, the way a soft pretzel should be. It has a little salty tang to it. Absolutely delicious. Go ahead, make some of your own. Let me know how it works out. Please leave a comment. Let me know how it works out. So you may ask, wait a minute, I just made 12 soft pretzels. I can't eat them all. What do I do with them? Well, you can freeze these. You can put these in a plastic bag after they cool down. Don't put them in a plastic bag while they're hot because the steam will soften them. But let them cool down, put them into a plastic bag and freeze them. When you want to have a pretzel, take it out, heat it up in a toaster oven or in your oven, maybe microwave, but that may not give you the crisp you want to have, and enjoy a pretzel. So that's what you can do with these after you finish making them if you don't want to eat them all at one sitting. The recipe you've seen alongside the video as we've gone along. And yet another recipe from the kitchens of the Sourdough Simpleton. I'm Mark Levy, I'm the Simpleton. More next time. And let me hear from you. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment on the Facebook page, visit the website, and check us out on Instagram as well, all under Sourdough Simpleton. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.